In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out across the northern Ural Mountains. They were young, well-trained, and they were prepared for severe winter conditions. They never returned. When searchers eventually found their campsite, it told a strange story, not of a struggle, not of a panic in the way we would normally understand it, but it told of a decision that no one has been able to fully explain. Not because there's no evidence, but because the evidence doesn't quite agree with itself. Welcome to the evidence gap. This group of hikers was led by Igor Dyatlov. He was an experienced student hiker from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. These weren't thrill seekers. These weren't casual outdoor enthusiasts. They were skilled skiers, familiar with winter expeditions, cold exposure, and survival protocols. Several of them had completed similar treks before. They knew what they were doing. Their plan was a multi-day ski route through remote mountainous terrain. Difficult, but well within their abilities. In other words, this was not a group prone to reckless decisions. Now, let's look at the setting for a moment. This region is harsh. Temperatures can drop well below freezing. Winds can be severe. Visibility can vanish quickly. The mountain near their final campsite is known locally as Kolatsiak. Often translated, let me get this straight now, often translated as Dead Mountain. Now, this isn't because of folklore, but because little grows there and almost no one passes on through. It's isolated, it's exposed, it's unforgiving. Still, nothing about the conditions was unexpected for this group. So when the group failed to return on schedule, a search was organized. Eventually, their tent was found on a slope. It was partially collapsed, and it had been cut open from the inside. So they continued to take a look. Inside, they found boots, coats, food, equipment, many of the things you'd expect people to take with them in an emergency were still there. Now, outside the tent, footprints led down the slope. Not running, though. Not scattered, just footprints. Some of them were barefoot, some in socks, moving away from the shelter into the cold. Now, the hikers were found. They were found in stages. Some were found near a tree line as if they were attempting to make a fire. Others were found further away in different positions. Some were inadequately dressed. Some wore clothing that belonged to others. Several of them showed signs of severe internal injuries. And yet, in many cases, there was little or no external trauma. There was no evidence of a violent struggle, possibly with another group. No clear sign of pursuit. Just this sequence of outcomes that really don't align. So this is where the case begins to resist simple explanations. Why leave a tent voluntarily in extreme cold? Why not retrieve clothing or your boots first? Why would you move together at first and then separate? Why do some injuries resemble blunt force trauma without the corresponding external damage? Why does each individual's situation seem to suggest a different cause, even though they were part of the same event? So, each detail can be explained on its own. The problem here is that no single explanation accounts for all of them at once. Let's talk about the theories. Several of these theories have been proposed over the years. That an avalanche could explain a sudden evacuation, but the terrain and evidence don't fully support it. Extreme wind or weather effects could cause disorientation, but not all injury patterns fit that. Panic possible, combined with hypothermia explains some behavior, but not the timing or the physical findings. Other ideas exist, but they introduce more assumptions than they resolve. None of them are impossible, but none of them are complete. This is where the problem truly lies. It's not in the lack of investigation. It's not because of missing data, but in the space where explanations begin to conflict with one another. Now, the evidence suggests rational decisions were made under stress, and outcomes that don't line up cleanly with any single cause. The gap isn't what happened. It's why every explanation leaves something behind. This isn't a paranormal story. It's not a conspiracy theory. And it's not a solved case that authorities are hiding, right? It's an example of something quieter and perhaps a little more uncomfortable. A situation where the evidence exists, but closure doesn't. Sometimes the most unsettling mysteries aren't the ones with no answers. They're the ones with too many, none of which fully fit. The Dyatlov Pass incident reminds us that even with experience, preparation, and evidence, human decisions under extreme conditions can still defy a clean explanation. And, sometimes the gap isn't in the data. It's in our expectation that everything needs to make sense. And that's where we are, in the evidence gap.